Imani Carter stood outside Liberty Cross Medical Center, the night air biting at her skin as she exhaled a long, tired breath. It was past 11 p.m., and the only light came from dim street lamps that lined the quiet Atlanta road. Her 12-hour shift as a nurse had drained every ounce of energy she had, but her day wasn't over yet. She still had to catch a late bus back to the tiny room she rented in a rundown apartment on the south side. Imani had worked at Liberty Cross for nearly 3 years. While waiting at the bus stop, she pulled out her phone and called her mother. After a few rings, the comforting voice of Mama Denise came through. "Imani, baby, is everything okay?" "Hey, Mama," Imani said, managing a small smile. "I just wanted to hear your voice. How you feeling?" A weak cough came through the speaker. "I'm hanging in there. Just a bit sore. Your little brothers are already asleep. And baby, thank you for that money last week. We paid their tuition just in time." Imani swallowed the guilt that rose in her throat. "Please remind them to study hard. I'm sorry I couldn't send more. Now don't start that. You're doing all you can. But I do wish you'd think more about yourself, baby. You working like this, it ain't right." Imani pressed her lips together to stop her tears. She wanted to tell Mama how bad things really were, that her last paycheck barely covered her groceries, but she didn't. She couldn't. "I'm okay, Mama. How's Caleb and his situation?" There was silence, then a sharp exhale. "Don't get me started. That girl's family's pushing for a wedding. She's pregnant, and Caleb's still got one more year of school. I told them we ain't got money for all that. Let's not dwell on it. I'll figure something out," Imani replied. "There's a bus coming. I'll call you soon." "All right, baby. Take care of yourself." As the call ended, Imani bit her lip, eyes stinging. The bus arrived, and she boarded quickly, hugging her threadbare coat close as she sat by the window. She reminded herself why she was fighting so hard. Her family needed her. She had to keep going. By the time she got off the bus and trudged up the steps to her building, she was half asleep. But when she reached her door, she stopped cold. A thick chain was wrapped around the knob, locked tightly with a heavy padlock. "What the hell?" she whispered. She hurried to knock on her landlady's door. Mrs. Paulette, a stout woman with too much jewelry and a mouthful of attitude, opened it mid-bite, a hot dog still in her hand. "What is it? Can't you see I'm eating?" "Why's my door locked up like that?" Imani asked, confused and scared. Mrs. Paulette rolled her eyes. "You seriously don't know? You're 3 months behind on rent. That was our agreement. No rent, no roof. Please, I had to send money home. I was hoping for just one more week to catch up. I ain't running no charity. You keep saying next week, and next week never comes. I just got off a long shift. I have nowhere else to go tonight. Please, let me stay one more night. Just one," Imani pleaded, voice cracking. "Nope. Not my problem. Your stuff's out in the hallway. If it's still there by morning, I'm burning it." She slammed the door. Imani stood frozen, then turned slowly toward the hallway. Her belongings were piled haphazardly. A worn suitcase, a few clothes stuffed into a plastic grocery bag, her old pillow, a blanket, and a thin mattress. That was everything she owned. She sank down beside them on the cold floor, hugging her arms to her body. She wanted to cry but couldn't even summon the energy. Tilting her head back, she stared at the sky above the crumbling ceiling tiles of the complex. She had nowhere to go. After a long pause, she dug into her pocket and called her best friend, Zola Green. The phone rang, and finally, a sleepy voice answered. "Imani? You okay?" "I'm sorry to wake you, Zola. I got kicked out. I'm sitting on the sidewalk with all my stuff. I didn't know who else to call." There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "Don't move. I'm waking up my dad. We'll come get you now." "Zola, Stop, you're not alone, Imani." Imani broke down as the call ended, crying into her hands as quietly as she could. Half an hour later, an old pickup pulled up. Zola jumped out and wrapped her arms around her. Behind her, Mr. Green, Zola's father, nodded solemnly and began helping them load her things into the back. During the drive to their small home on the west side, Imani was silent, barely able to speak. When they arrived, she stepped into the tiny living room where 3 kids lay asleep on a mattress. Zola led her to her room. "You can stay here as long as you need," Zola said. "We got some bread if you're hungry." "I'm okay." "Really?" Zola turned on a fan and sat beside her. Imani sank into the mattress. She'd held back so much, her struggles, her exhaustion, her hopelessness. It all poured out now. "I'm so tired, Zola," she whispered. "I feel like the world's against me. I keep pushing, but everything keeps falling apart." Zola didn't say much. She just wrapped her arms around her and whispered, "You're not alone. We've got you." In that small room with a creaky fan spinning and the hum of night outside, Imani finally let herself cry. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she had a safe place to land. From that night forward, Imani stayed with Zola and her family in their modest home. Though it wasn't her own space, the warmth in the green household gave her a comfort she hadn't felt in months. Every morning, Mr. Green greeted her with a big smile and a, "You eat yet, child?" as if she were one of his own. Mrs. Regina Green, Zola's mother, ran a little corner store out front but always made sure Imani had something hot for breakfast before she left for work. Even Zola's 3 younger siblings, Brielle, Malik, and Benny, were kind to her. Benny, the youngest at 5, quickly became attached, often pulling silly faces or performing dances just to make her laugh. Imani and Zola had been friends for only 2 years, but Imani felt like they were family. They had first met during their training days at Liberty Cross Medical, both fresh out of nursing school and overwhelmed on their first shifts. Imani still remembered how lost she felt on her first day, charting, patient rotations, protocols. It was Zola's easy smile and quick help that got her through. Over time, they had become inseparable, sharing late-night snacks during long shifts, commuting together on the city bus when they could, and venting to each other about patients and life. In a world that often felt cold and unfair, Zola was one of Imani's few steady lights. But the hospital wasn't all camaraderie. There were others like Chantel Brooks, another nurse who carried herself with a snobbish air because her aunt, Miss Loretta James, was the head nurse of their department. Chantel used that connection like a crown, throwing her weight around, and making others, especially Imani, feel lesser. One evening, as Imani walked into the nurse's station, Chantel was already perched there like a vulture. She didn't wait even a second to pounce. "Well, look who finally made it to work. I figured you'd quit by now," Chantel sneered, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I heard you got kicked out of your place. Word travels fast, girl." Imani's hand froze mid-reach for the logbook. She clenched her jaw but said nothing. She wouldn't give Chantel the satisfaction. "Can you hand me the chart for room 212, please?" Imani asked calmly, looking straight ahead. Chantel gave a mocking laugh. "Oh, so now you're giving orders? That's cute. Maybe when you pay your rent, you can start acting like you're better than people." "I'll get it myself," Imani said, walking away. Zola appeared a moment later, slipping into step beside her. "You okay?" she whispered. "I'm fine. Just another day surviving Chantel's trash talk. She's still bitter because that fine nurse from radiology asked you out last year. Remember that? She never got over it," Zola whispered, rolling her eyes. Imani chuckled quietly, remembering how she'd turned the guy down because she simply wasn't in the headspace for romance. As they continued their rounds, Imani stayed focused, refusing to let Chantel's words rattle her. The truth was, she was used to long hours, bad attitudes, and sleepless nights. She did her job with care and compassion, no matter how heavy life outside the hospital got. Later that night, while taking vitals on a patient, she felt Zola tap her gently on the shoulder. "Girl," Chantel's still running her mouth. "This time she's telling people you're only working here because Miss James pities you." Imani sighed. "Let her talk. People who know me will know the truth." But no matter how hard she tried to ignore Chantel's words, they cut deep. She could feel the side eyes and whispers that came with every break in the hallway. Still, she pushed forward. Her patients needed her. Her family needed her. She couldn't afford to crumble. After their shift ended that morning, Imani and Zola sat quietly in the locker room, nursing sore feet and heavy eyelids. The overhead fan creaked with every turn. Then Imani's phone buzzed. It was her mother. "Hey, Mama, is everything okay?" she asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "Baby, I hate to ask again, but your brother's girlfriend needs a prenatal checkup. We got no money for it and I didn't know who else to call," her mother said, voice full of guilt and weariness. Imani's heart sank. "Mama, I don't have anything right now, but I'll find a way, I promise. You always say that. I hate putting more on your shoulders, Imani, but we don't have anyone else." "It's okay, Mama, I'll send it by tonight." She ended the call and sat in silence, staring at the ground. Her chest ached from the pressure of holding her whole family together with frayed string. Zola returned from her locker and sat beside her. "You look like the weight of the world is on your back. What's wrong now?" Imani gave a tired smile. "That was my mom. My brother's girl needs a checkup. I gotta send more money today. But I'm broke. Again." Zola didn't hesitate. She reached into her purse and pulled out some folded bills, pressing them into Imani's palm. "I can't take this." "Yes, you can. Don't make me fight you on this. You'd do the same for me." Imani's eyes brimmed with tears. "Zola, I still haven't paid you back from last time. You will when you can. Right now, your family needs help. That means you need help. And I got you." Imani nodded, overwhelmed by the kindness. Zola grinned. "Don't get me crying in here, girl. Let's get home. We got one whole day off. Let's not waste it thinking about bills." As they walked out of the hospital together, the sun rising behind them, Imani knew one thing for sure. She might have lost her home, and she might have carried the burden of too many people, but in Zola, she had gained something priceless. A sister by choice. After their day off, Imani and Zola returned to their shifts, this time on daytime rotation. The atmosphere during day duty was different from night shifts. Busier, louder, more patients, more families, more hospital politics. By noon, they sat together in the staff cafeteria, unwrapping simple lunches they'd brought from home. Imani had packed fried chicken and rice wrapped in foil, while Zola had a peanut butter sandwich and apple slices. "You look too quiet," Imani said, noticing her friend hadn't cracked a joke in 10 minutes. "What's going on in that brilliant head of yours?" Zola leaned in, eyes wide with a mischievous spark. "Girl, you heard about the new VIP patient in the building?" Imani raised an eyebrow. "VIP? This ain't a hotel." "No, I'm serious. One of the richest men in the state got admitted last night. They gave him the private suite on the top floor. He's apparently got stage 4 cancer." "Okay, and who is this mystery patient?" Imani asked, unbothered, still eating. Zola's jaw dropped. "You mean to tell me you've never heard of Mr. Elijah Bennett?" Imani shook her head. "Should I have?" "Girl, Elijah Bennett owns half the hotels in Georgia. Chain restaurants, luxury condos, cruise lines. His name is everywhere. Rich, rich." Imani shrugged. "He's a patient like anyone else." Zola laughed. "Keep talking like that and watch. You might end up being his nurse." Imani rolled her eyes and went back to eating. "As long as he doesn't throw things at me like Mr. Thompson did last week, I don't care." Zola grinned. "I'll remind you of that when you're dodging juice cups and attitude." Hours later, their shift ended and they returned to the staff lockers. As they entered, they were greeted by a strange sight. Chantel Brooks crying of all things, surrounded by a few nurses trying to calm her down. Imani and Zola exchanged wary glances. A large red bump swelled on Chantel's forehead, and her cheeks were stained with smeared makeup. Her voice rose, thick with fury. "That man, he threw his damn cup at me, all because his water wasn't cold enough. Can you believe that?" One of the nurses gently said, "He's really sick, Chantel. Maybe he wasn't in his right mind." "That don't mean he gets to assault me. I ain't nobody's punching bag. Just 'cause he's rich doesn't mean he owns us." Chantel's voice cracked, but as soon as she caught sight of Imani and Zola watching, her face twisted with fresh venom. "What y'all looking at?" Zola raised an eyebrow. "You, acting like a victim when we all know you treat people worse on the Daily. Chantel leapt up, eyes blazing. Say that again, Zola. Nah, we're good. Enjoy your spotlight, Zola muttered, gathering her things. Outside, as they walked home under a soft gray dusk, Zola burst into laughter. She looked like a rhino with a horn growing out of her head. Imani didn't laugh. She shook her head instead. I get it, she's awful, but I can't celebrate someone else getting hurt. Zola sighed. That's why I love you, Imani. You got that moral compass even when folks don't deserve your grace. Imani gave a soft smile, though her mind wandered. If Mr. Bennett, this supposedly terrifying rich man, was causing bruises, she was glad she hadn't been assigned to him. But in a hospital like Liberty Cross, things changed quickly. Assignments could shift in an instant. The next few days at Liberty Cross Medical Center were abuzz with whispers about Mr. Elijah Bennett. His name spread through the halls like wildfire. Each nurse had a new horror story. One claimed he cursed her out for adjusting his pillow wrong. Another said he hurled his food tray at a tech because the soup was lukewarm. To Imani, it all sounded like legend, frightening but distant. Until one afternoon, just before the end of her shift, Nurse Leah, one of the seniors, approached with a clipboard in hand and a tight expression. Imani, Miss James wants to see you in her office, 4th floor. Imani froze. Miss Loretta? Did she say what it was about? Leah shook her head. Didn't say much. Just told me to tell you to go now. As Leah walked away, Zola appeared behind Imani like a shadow. Did I just hear that right? Miss James wants to see you? Imani turned to her, dread filling her chest. Yeah, I have a bad feeling. Oh no, Zola whispered, eyes wide. That's exactly how it started with me. One meeting with Miss James, and next thing I knew, I was reassigned to Mr. Bennett. Imani's stomach dropped. But we're already short on our ward. It wouldn't make sense to pull me. Girl, sense don't matter in this hospital. That man has money. They bend over backwards for him, Zola muttered. Imani took a deep breath, trying to steel herself. Let me go find out. Maybe it's something else. But deep down, she already knew it wasn't. She made her way to the elevator, her hands clammy and her heart pounding. When she reached Miss James's office, she knocked lightly. Come in, came the sharp voice from inside. Imani stepped in. The head nurse looked up from her paperwork without smiling. Imani starting immediately. You'll be reassigned. You're Mr. Elijah Bennett's primary nurse for the rest of his stay here. The words hit like a hammer. Ma'am, please, can I ask for another assignment? I've heard what happened to Zola and the others. I'm scared I won't be able to handle him. Miss James didn't blink. It's not up for discussion. Mr. Bennett personally requested you. Imani's eyebrows knit. Requested me? But we've never really spoken. I don't know how he knows you, but he was clear. He said your name specifically. And at this hospital, when someone like Elijah Bennett asks for something, we don't say no. Miss James handed her his medical file. Imani took it slowly and opened it. Mr. Bennett, 76 years old, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, weakness, pain, no appetite. He'd rejected all further chemotherapy and was now under palliative care. Reading those words softened some of Imani's fear. He wasn't just an angry man. He was dying. She left Miss James's office and walked down the hallway toward the top floor. Sweet with the heavy file in hand, her nerves hummed, sweat beaded at her back. She knew this could be the hardest patient she'd ever face, but she also knew she had no choice. She knocked lightly and opened the door. Inside was a dim, quiet room with soft sunlight pouring through the windows, and there he was, Mr. Elijah Bennett, leaning back in a bed, hooked to IVs, eyes closed but alert. He looked thinner than the rumors made him out to be, pale, fragile. As he turned his head and opened his eyes, they locked with Imani's. It's you, he said in a gravelly voice. Imani's eyes widened. We met before, the other day. You were trying to get to the bathroom. He smirked faintly. Took you long enough to get back here. His tone was curt but not venomous. Imani stepped forward. I'm Nurse Imani. I'll be taking care of you from now on, Mr. Bennett. I already know that. I asked for you, didn't I? Imani smiled nervously. Yes, sir, you did. She moved into action, checking his vitals, adjusting his IV, making sure his linens were clean and dry. How are you feeling today? Like the life's been sucked out of me, he muttered. But I suppose that's expected. I'll do my best. To make you comfortable, Mr. Bennett. He didn't respond, just stared out the window, eyes weary. When she finished her rounds, she said gently, I'll be just outside, sir. Let me know if you need anything. She stepped out, heart still racing, but something about him didn't match the stories. Yes, he was stern. But beneath the sarcasm, there was something else. Something sad. Hollow. As she walked down the hallway, back to her station, she glanced back at the door to his room. This isn't going to be easy, she thought, but somehow she knew. This wasn't just another patient. This was the beginning of something that would change her forever. That evening, as Imani and Zola walked out of Liberty Cross Medical Center, the sky above Atlanta was streaked with purple and gold. The day had been long, but Imani's mind was still fixed on one thing: Mr. Elijah Bennett. Zola nudged her as they waited at the bus stop. So? How bad was it? Imani glanced at her. Honestly, not as bad as I expected. He was blunt, sure. Cold, but he didn't yell. Didn't throw anything, he just seemed tired. Zola's eyebrows rose. That man cursed out an entire surgical team last month for bringing him lukewarm coffee. Maybe he's different with me because we met before. I helped him to the bathroom that day. He recognized me, Imani said softly. Or maybe you're just the Imani effect, Zola said, smirking. You got that calm energy. Even the devil might chill around you. Imani smiled faintly but didn't reply. Her thoughts drifted back to Mr. Bennett's sunken eyes, the faint tremble. In his hands, the distant way he looked out the window. Over the next few days, Imani settled into her new assignment. Each morning she walked into Mr. Bennett's suite with quiet confidence, taking his vitals, administering medications, and tidying up with care. At first he rarely spoke. When he did, it was short and sharp, but he never raised his voice, never treated her cruelly. She started to notice things. He never had visitors. No flowers, no cards, no family pictures, only silence. One morning, as she entered his room, she passed a small flower card in the hallway. She paused. Her eyes landed on a simple bouquet of orange tulips. Something about them reminded her of warmth, of home. Without overthinking, she bought them. Later, she stepped into Mr. Bennett's room holding the small bouquet. Good morning, Mr. Bennett, she said with her usual softness. I brought you something. She placed the tulips in a vase by the window. He stared at them for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, his lips parted, and his voice came low and hoarse. Those were my daughter's favorite. Imani paused. She hadn't known he had a daughter. She looked at him gently. They're beautiful, bright, peaceful. He didn't reply, but his eyes glistened as he turned away, staring out the window with a quiet heaviness. Imani said nothing more. She adjusted his pillows, checked his IV, then stepped out, leaving the room gently filled with the scent of fresh blooms. The next morning was different. When she entered with his usual morning meds, Mr. Bennett sat upright, tense. His eyes were shadowed, darker than usual. As she stepped closer, he suddenly slapped the tray away. Pills clattered to the floor. Water spilled onto the sheets. I don't want it, he barked. What's the point? I'm dying anyway, just let it happen already. Imani stood still, heart pounding but face calm. She didn't scold him, didn't flinch. She knelt, slowly picking up the scattered medication. Then she walked over, sat gently at the edge of his bed, and looked him in the eye. I know you're in pain. I know you're tired. But Mr. Bennett, you're still here. Which means your life still has meaning. He looked at her, eyes filled with sorrow. Everyone I loved is gone. My daughter, she died. I didn't even get to say goodbye. My wife left me. I buried myself in work and money to forget everything. Now I'm just a tired old man alone with regrets. Imani reached for his hand. You might feel alone, but you're not invisible. Your life still matters, you matter. His lips trembled. For a long while he didn't speak. Then quietly he whispered, "Why are you so kind to me?" Imani smiled. Because someone needs to be, and because no one should leave this world feeling unloved. For the first time since she'd met him, Elijah Bennett didn't look like a fearsome millionaire. He looked like a father without a child. And for the first time, Imani felt something deeper stir between them. Something more than nurse and patient, something like family. The air in Mr. Elijah Bennett's room had shifted. After that emotional outburst, the man who once barked orders now often sat quietly, gazing at the tulips Imani had brought. Each morning when she entered, he gave a faint nod. Not warm, but no longer guarded. One afternoon, she stepped in and noticed him staring out the window, lost in thought as the sun cast golden lines across his blankets. "That view outside sure is beautiful, isn't it?" she said gently, fluffing the pillow behind his back. Mr. Bennett didn't look at her. "I stopped noticing things like that a long time ago." "Why?" she asked. "Because when you're dying, sunsets feel like insults." Imani paused. "Or maybe they're gifts you finally have time to notice." He chuckled bitterly. "You think pretty words can change reality?" "No," she said softly. "But they can soften it." He turned to her, the hardness in his expression briefly cracking. "I used to be like that sun, bright, powerful, untouchable. But now I can't even walk without someone holding my arm. You're still you, Mr. Bennett. Strength isn't just in the body, it's in what you choose to do with the time you have left." There was silence. Then, in a voice that trembled more with regret than age, he said, "I had a daughter. Her name was Autumn. She had a heart defect. When she was 6, she died in a hospital bed like this one." Imani slowly lowered herself onto the chair beside him. "Where were you?" she asked softly. He looked down at his hands. "At a board meeting trying to close a hotel deal. My wife begged me to come. I told her I'd come after the contract was signed. By the time I got to the hospital, she was gone." Imani's breath caught. "My wife walked out on me the same day. Said I'd chosen profits over parenthood. She wasn't wrong. I buried myself in work after that. Made more money than I could ever spend. But I never filled the hole they left." His eyes brimmed with tears that didn't fall. Imani reached across and gently held his hand. "You made a mistake. A terrible one. But that doesn't mean you're beyond redemption. You're still breathing, Mr. Bennett. That means life hasn't given up on you yet." He looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "You remind me of her. Of Autumn." Imani blinked back tears of her own. "Then I'm honored." In the days that followed, their connection deepened. Mr. Bennett began to share more stories about his childhood in rural Alabama, about the first restaurant he built from the ground up, about the way his daughter used to sing to herself before. But in return, Imani shared bits of her own story, how her father passed when she was just a teenager, how she became a nurse not for the money, but because she wanted to help people heal, both in body and in spirit. "How many siblings you got?" he asked one day, sipping slowly from a cup of warm tea. "4. I'm the oldest. I help Mama raise them now. She's got arthritis real bad, so it's mostly on me." He nodded slowly. "So you're the backbone." "I try. Some days I feel like I'm holding up the whole world on shaky knees." He looked at her for a long time. "You shouldn't have to carry it alone." Imani smiled gently. "Most days I don't mind, but sometimes I forget what it's like to live for me." Mr. Bennett's gaze sharpened. "Don't do that. Don't lose yourself in saving everyone else. You matter too, Imani." Hearing her name spoken like that, firmly, with affection, made her heart ache. In a world that always demanded more from her than she had to give, Mr. Bennett's words were a gift. One evening, she stepped into his room and found him holding a photograph. It was old and faded, but the little girl in it, round face, bright eyes, was unmistakably Autumn. This was taken the last weekend we spent together. We went to the park. She fed ducks and laughed so loud I thought the sky would crack. He paused. "Would you get my wallet?" Imani retrieved it from the drawer and handed it to him. He opened it and carefully slid the photo back inside like it was treasure. Then he looked at her, seriously, quietly. "Imani, I have one last favor to ask before I go." She froze. "What is it, sir?" "One day," he said, his voice breaking. "Just one day. Would you pretend to be my daughter? So I can remember what it feels like. Just once." Her eyes widened. "I'll pay you," he added. "I know you need the money. I'll make it worth your while." Imani shook her head instantly. "Mr. Bennett, no. That's not something you pay for. If you need a daughter for a day, then I'll be your daughter. No strings. No payment." He stared at her, speechless. Then, for the first time since they met, Elijah Bennett cried without shame. And Imani held his hand, not as a nurse, not as a caregiver, but as a daughter who understood the weight of loss and the healing power of love. The next morning, Imani stood outside the office of Dr. Vernon Rhodes, one of the senior physicians at Liberty Cross. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, her heart racing as she rehearsed what she wanted to say. When the door opened, Dr. Rhodes gave her a kind smile. "Come in, Nurse Carter." She stepped inside, took a breath, and began. "Dr. Rhodes, I know this is highly irregular, but I'm here to request something on behalf of Mr. Bennett." His smile faded, and his brow furrowed. "Go on." "He wants to be discharged for one day. Just for a few hours. There's somewhere he wants to go. Something he wants to feel before it's too late." Dr. Rhodes leaned back in his chair. "Imani, you know we don't usually allow terminal patients out without strong medical supervision, especially someone as fragile as Mr. Bennett." "I'll go with him," she said quickly. "We'll have a driver. I'll monitor him personally and we'll be back before nightfall. Please, this means the world to him." Dr. Rhodes studied her face for a long moment. Then he sighed and gave a small nod. "You've worked miracles with that man, Nurse Carter. I'll authorize it. But if anything happens, I need you to call immediately." "Thank you, doctor. I promise I'll make sure he's safe." That afternoon, one of Mr. Bennett's sleek black SUVs waited outside the hospital entrance. A professional driver held the door open as Imani helped Elijah into the back seat, gently lifting his legs and making sure he was comfortable. He wore a soft gray sweater and slacks. Though thinner than ever, his eyes were brighter than she had ever seen. "You ready, Dad?" she asked with a small smile. He turned to her slowly. "You called me Dad." "I figured if we're going to pretend," she said, "we might as well do it right." Mr. Bennett gave a breathy laugh. "You might just break my old heart for real, child." Their first stop was a riverside park tucked on the outskirts of the city. Trees swayed in the autumn breeze, and children ran along the trails with paper boats and toy kites. Mr. Bennett's gaze swept over it all, his eyes glistening. "My little girl loved it here," he whispered. "We used to sit under that big tree near the bend, and she'd throw leaves in the river, pretending they were sailboats." Imani walked him slowly to a wooden bench, helping him sit. Together they watched the children play, the water ripple, and the sun dance on the current. Then they moved on. Their next stop was a tiny ice cream parlor with pastel walls and squeaky stools. Mr. Bennett ordered 2 scoops of butter pecan, Autumn's favorite, and insisted Imani have one too. "You're not paying for anything today," he told her as they sat by the window. "Daughters don't pay when their old man is still around." As they ate, he shared stories, not of business deals or empires, but of bedtime songs and bubble baths, of little hands holding his finger and giggling fits that echoed through his old home. Imani listened, smiling and nodding, soaking in every word. They laughed together, real laughter, soft, healing. Later, they visited a small bookstore. Mr. Bennett's daughter had loved to read, and it had been her favorite Saturday spot. "Do you read much, honey?" he asked. "Used to," Imani said. "Now I barely have time." "Then let me gift you something to remember today." She hesitated but finally picked a novel with a pale blue cover. At the counter after he paid, Mr. Bennett carefully wrote a message on the first page. "To my daughter Imani, who brought light back into an old man's life. Love, Dad." Imani's throat tightened as she read it. She pressed the book to her chest, blinking away tears. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. Their last stop was a department store. "I haven't gone shopping with a daughter in so long," he said. "Please let me do this." Imani picked a modest floral dress, but he insisted on shoes and a purse too. "You deserve more than just what you need," he told her. "You deserve what brings you joy." She didn't argue. She simply smiled, letting him enjoy the moment. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting amber light through the SUV windows, Imani looked over to see Mr. Bennett dozing, his breathing slower but peaceful. She reached over and gently touched his hand. "Dad, are you happy?" His eyes fluttered open. He gave her a warm, exhausted smile. "More than I ever thought I'd be again." She held his hand all the way back to the hospital, neither of them speaking, both knowing, deep in their hearts, that this was a goodbye in disguise. The evening air was quiet and cool when they arrived back at Liberty Cross Medical Center. The sky had faded to a soft indigo, stars just beginning to flicker above the city. Imani helped Mr. Bennett out of the SUV slowly, holding his arm with extra care as the driver retrieved his shopping bags. A few nurses greeted them at the entrance, with curious glances, whispering as they passed. Imani didn't care. Inside, she guided him back to his room. The flowers were still fresh in the vase. The light was dimmed low. She fluffed his pillows and laid out his night medication, but tonight he didn't seem focused on the routine. He just watched her, like he was memorizing her face. When she turned to say goodnight, he reached out and gently took her hand. "Imani, thank you for today," he said, his voice frail but steady. "You gave me back something I thought I'd never feel again." "You gave me something too," she said, barely able to hold her voice steady. "I lost my dad when I was young, but today, it felt like I had him back." A single tear rolled down Mr. Bennett's cheek. "You're the daughter I wish I'd had a chance to raise. You've given me peace, child. Real peace." She squeezed his hand tightly. "I'll keep praying you get more days. More time." He reached up and brushed her braids away from her cheek with a trembling hand like a real father would. "Live your life, Imani. Don't let it pass by while you're carrying the world for everyone else. You hear me?" "I hear you, Dad," she whispered. He smiled at that, truly smiled, then laid his head back against the pillow. "Good night, my girl," he said. Imani stood at the doorway, taking one last look at the man who had changed her in just a matter of days. Then she stepped out and gently closed the door behind her. Only when she reached the hallway did the tears come. She sank into the wall, covering her face with her hands as the sobs escaped her chest. She didn't even care who saw. It wasn't just about him. It was everything. The years of being strong, of fighting alone, of never being seen. For once, someone had seen her. And now, he was slipping away. The next morning, Imani walked into the hospital with a lightness in her step. Her heart still ached, but she carried it differently now. She linked arms with Zola as they walked toward the nurse's station. "You wouldn't believe the day we had yesterday," Imani said, smiling. "We went to the park, the bookstore, even got ice cream. He bought me a dress, Zola. He called me his daughter." Zola looked at her, eyes wide and warm. "You're glowing. I haven't seen you this at peace in a long time." But as they stepped through the hospital doors, the mood shifted. Miss Loretta James was waiting near the front desk, her face pale, her expression unusually solemn. "Imani," she said gently, "can I speak with you for a moment?" Imani's smile faded. She stepped closer, confusion washing over her. "What is it?" Miss James hesitated before speaking. I'm sorry, Imani. Mr. Bennett passed away last night, peacefully, in his sleep. The words hit like a wave crashing over her. No, Imani whispered, stepping back, her knees weakening. No, we just talked. We laughed. He was fine when I left. Zola reached for her, but Imani shook her head, already moving down the hallway. She burst into room 412, his room, but it was empty. The bed had been stripped. The flowers were gone. Everything was sterile and still. Gone. She collapsed onto the bed frame and hugged a pillow to her chest, sobbing harder than she had in years. The loss felt unbearable. Not because they were blood, but because in that short time Mr. Bennett had become something sacred. A father, a mentor, a part of her. Zola entered quietly, kneeling beside her, wrapping her arms around her like a sister would. Imani sobbed into her shoulder. He called me his daughter. He said goodnight. I thought we had more time. Zola whispered, You gave him everything he was missing, and he gave you something back too. They sat there for a long time, wrapped in silence and sorrow, but also in love, because some bonds, no matter how brief, are strong enough to last forever. The funeral was held 3 days later at a quiet chapel on the east side of Atlanta. The casket was white, trimmed with silver and surrounded by lilies and soft gospel music. Imani stood at the front near the flowers, dressed in the simple floral dress Mr. Bennett had insisted she pick out. A framed photo of him, young, smiling, full of life, sat on an easel nearby. It was a face she had never seen before but instantly recognized in her heart. Zola stood beside her, holding her hand. There were no children, no wife, just a few old friends, a driver, a few former employees, and Imani, the only one who had heard his final words. As they lowered his casket into the ground, Imani's tears fell freely. I wasn't your daughter by blood, she whispered, but I hope I made you feel like a father again. The ground accepted his body, but her soul struggled to let him go. When she returned to work a few days later, the hospital halls felt different, quieter, colder. The buzz of nurses whispering seemed louder than before, though their words were barely audible. Zola was waiting at the nurse's station with a tight expression. Imani, can we talk? They stepped into the stockroom. Zola closed the door behind them. It's Chantel. Imani stiffened. What about her? Zola's eyes were burning. She's been going around saying awful things. She's telling people you and Mr. Bennett had an affair, that he gave you money, that you seduced him. Imani's mouth went dry. What? I heard it myself. She said it in front of 2 other nurses yesterday. She's making it sound like everything that happened was dirty, like you used your body to get into his will. Imani stood frozen, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. But that's a lie. I know, Zola said fiercely. I told her to stop. I even started recording her when she kept talking. I've got the proof, but the damage had already begun. Later that day in the break room, Imani walked in and felt the air shift. Conversation stopped. Eyes avoided hers. One nurse even stood and walked out. Zola followed her in, fuming. They believe it. Some of them believe Chantel's trash. Imani sat down at a corner table, suddenly exhausted. I did nothing wrong, she said softly. I cared for a man in his final days. I gave him peace, and now they're turning it into something shameful. That's because Chantel's bitter and hateful. You softened someone she couldn't control, and she can't handle that, Zola snapped. Imani nodded slowly, but her heart still hurt. The next morning, Imani was stocking the cabinet in the supply room when the door opened. Chantel Brooks stepped in, her eyes already gleaming with cruelty. Well, look who's still walking around like she owns the place. Imani didn't flinch. What do you want? Chantel leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. You really played it well, huh? Old rich man, dying, lonely. And you? All sweet and innocent. He probably left you a fortune. You don't know anything about what we had, Imani said quietly, firm. Chantel's smile turned nasty. I know he changed his will. Everyone knows. You think people don't talk? You fooled him. And now you're living off his money while the rest of us grind. Imani's jaw tightened. What I did for Mr. Bennett had nothing to do with money. He asked me to pretend to be his daughter for one day. I said yes, no strings, no payment. Chantel snorted. Sure. And I'm the queen of Wakanda. You're spreading lies because you're bitter. But I don't need to explain myself to you, Imani said, turning to leave. Before she could open the door, it swung wide. Miss Loretta James stood there, her face unreadable. Chantel, my office, now. Chantel's smug look evaporated. Auntie, don't auntie me right now, Miss James snapped. Imani, you come too. They walked in silence. In the office, Miss James shut the door, her voice quiet but icy. I've received a complaint. Not just gossip, formal, about defamation. Zola provided a recording of you, Chantel, spreading false rumors about Nurse Carter and Mr. Bennett. Chantel turned pale. It was just talk. You accused her of having an inappropriate relationship with a dying man. You shamed the memory of a respected patient and slandered a nurse who has done nothing but uplift this place. But no excuses. This hospital has no room for envy, disrespect, or lies. Chantel looked like she might cry, but Miss James didn't waver. You're suspended immediately. HR will follow up. We will not tolerate this kind of behavior, not even from my own blood, Chantel gasped. You're choosing her over me? I'm choosing what's right. As Chantel stormed out, Imani remained seated, eyes still damp from frustration. Miss James looked at her, and for the first time her voice softened. I'm sorry you had to endure that, but I want you to know. We see you, Nurse Carter, and we're proud. Imani nodded silently. Later, as she walked down the hall, Zola ran up beside her. She's done, fired. You can breathe again. Imani smiled faintly. I didn't want her to be fired. I just wanted her to stop. Well, now she will. And in that moment, Imani realized something. No matter how strong the storm, truth has a way of shining through. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the knock came. Imani was sweeping the living room floor in the Green household. Zola and her mom were out at the corner store, and the younger kids were watching cartoons in the next room. She didn't expect anyone. She opened the door to find a tall, well-dressed black man in his mid-50s carrying a leather briefcase. He wore a white shirt, pressed slacks, and polished shoes. Good morning, are you Miss Imani Carter? He asked, his voice formal but kind. I am, she replied cautiously. He held out a business card. Attorney Malcolm Sanderson. I represented Mr. Elijah Bennett before his passing. May I come in? I have something important to discuss. Imani's pulse quickened. She stepped aside. Yes, of course. Please come in. He sat at the small dining table and carefully opened his briefcase. From it, he withdrew a thick envelope and several notarized documents. Miss Carter, I'm here to inform you that Mr. Bennett named you in his final will. You are the beneficiary of a significant portion of his estate. Imani's breath caught. I'm sorry. What? He nodded solemnly. He left behind assets for you, specifically farmland in Montana, a vacation home in Colorado, and a financial trust account. She stared at him, frozen. No, that's too much. I never wanted. Mr. Bennett made his decision with full clarity and sincerity, Mr. Sanderson interrupted gently. He spoke of you often in his final days. He said you gave him peace, that your compassion reminded him of the daughter he lost. Tears welled up in Imani's eyes. He told me he never believed in blessings, until you. Attorney Sanderson slid the documents toward her. I understand this is overwhelming, but his wish was clear. He saw you not only as his caregiver, but as family. Imani touched the edge of the folder, trembling. I don't know if I can accept this. I'm just a nurse. I was just being human. And that's exactly why he chose you, the lawyer said, closing his briefcase. He said, Imani didn't treat me like a dying man. She treated me like a father. As he stood to leave, he handed her one final envelope. He also left you a letter, in his handwriting. She held the envelope as though it were glass. Thanka, you, she whispered. That evening, after dinner, Imani sat on Zola's bed with the letter in her lap. The house was quiet. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside, the handwriting was shaky, but familiar. My dearest Imani, if you're reading this, then my time has passed, and I pray I went with peace in my heart because of you. You gave me more than care. You gave me forgiveness I didn't earn, warmth I didn't expect, and love I didn't deserve. I never got to raise a daughter, but for one day, I felt what that would have been like, and it changed everything for me. Use what I've left you, not just to survive, but to live. Open doors for others. Rest, dream. Become more than what this world tried to box you into. You are not just a nurse, Imani. You are light. Love, Dad. Her tears fell freely now, soaking the edges of the letter. Zola knocked lightly before stepping in. She saw the letter in Imani's hands and knelt beside her. You okay? Imani nodded through the tears. He left me everything. A house, land, money. But this letter, it's worth more than all of that. Zola wrapped her arms around her, and they cried together. Not just for the loss, but for the unexpected beauty of love that had come into Imani's life when she least expected it. In the weeks that followed, Imani didn't quit her job. She returned to Liberty Cross with her head held high. She knew what people had said. She also knew the truth, and so did those who mattered. She helped pay off all her mother's medical bills, sent her siblings back to school without worry, bought a home large enough for the whole Carter family to live together in comfort. But she didn't stop there. She also used some of Mr. Bennett's gift to open a small flower shop in his name, Autumn Blooms. And next to it, she opened a small, soul food cafe called Daughter's Table, where every dish was served with love and a story behind it. One crisp afternoon, Imani returned to Mr. Bennett's grave in Atlanta's Southview Memorial Cemetery. She knelt beside the stone, laying a fresh bouquet of orange tulips across the granite. I still miss you, she whispered. But I'm okay, I promise. Your legacy didn't die with you. It lives in every life you touched. And I'll make sure it keeps growing. She pressed a kiss to her fingertips, touched the top of the stone, and stood. The wind stirred the tulips gently. Imani turned toward the sunlight, ready to face her next chapter, because now she wasn't just surviving, she was finally truly living.